Does teaching steal more from teachers than just their time? Well, let's find out. At some point, teaching stopped being a job and it became an identity. And that identity has come at a high personal cost for some teachers. And that's because in education, there is an unspoken rule. And in this video, I want to share with you the unspoken rule that is the cause of all this pressure, how to deal with it, and how to keep it from stealing your identity. But before we do that, I want you to know a few things. First of all, you won't find this rule in the employee handbook. You'll never find it in any of your education classes. HR is not going to come and sit down with you and tell you all about the rule. None of that's going to happen. But nevertheless, the rule is real. And the way that you learn the rule is by watching what gets rewarded versus what gets punished. You'll know that the unspoken rule is in effect when it feels risky to let others know that you're struggling, or when exhaustion becomes your state of being, or when you feel like setting boundaries is somehow forbidden. And over time, this rule will lead you to believe that there's something wrong with you. So what is the unspoken rule? And it's this: good teachers don't make it about themselves. Now, I know exactly what you're thinking. As soon as you heard that, you said, well, of course that's the way it is, because we're teachers and that's exactly what we do. And that is exactly what makes the unspoken rule so dangerous, because the rule doesn't sound harmful. It actually sounds responsible. And it kind of comes off like this: we don't complain, we don't draw attention to ourselves, or we handle our own stuff, or we're going to be a team player. And as teachers, responsibility is something that we value. We teach it to our students. We model it for our students. And so in many ways, it actually feels aligned with who we are. And that's part of the problem. It also sounds mature or emotionally strong. It sounds kind of like this. It sounds like, I don't need recognition. I'll just push through. I'll put the needs of the students in the school above my own. And I want you to know that service and servanthood are absolutely noble. It is a noble thing to serve others. But here's the line that teachers never have permission to say, and I wrote it down for us. Self-denial without self-care becomes self-neglect. And that's where the damage begins. And the reason why is because as teachers, we oftentimes fail to set appropriate boundaries to protect ourselves. And that's why I created this resource for you. It's called Reclaim Your Limits. It's free. It's 100% free. It's always free. You can get it down at the description box, or you can check it out right here at the QR code. Either way, whatever's good for you, just go get it so that you can get boundaries in place to protect yourself. The unspoken rule is dangerous precisely because it sounds right. The most harmful rules never sound cruel. They always sound like they're right. They always sound professional. And in education, professionalism often gets translated into things like don't make waves, or don't take this personal, or don't take up too much space. In other words, stay in your own lane and be quiet. As a result, teachers learn to minimize themselves so that they don't become the problem. And every teacher knows what happens if you don't. The teachers who speak up, they get labeled. The ones who set boundaries, they're the ones that get criticized. The ones that refuse to negotiate their limits, somehow it's them that's being difficult. How in the world did we ever become the problem? I mean, it couldn't be the endless workload. It couldn't be the ridiculous standards that are put on top of us and expectations. It couldn't be the student behavior. It couldn't be the crazy parents that we have to deal with. None of that could possibly be the problem, could it? It must absolutely be us that is the problem. What a gaslight that is. That's the ultimate gaslight that I can possibly think of. Somehow we're in the middle of this broken system, but you're the problem. And when harmful habits wear the language of professionalism, they become invisible. And before long, teachers don't resist them. We internalize them. We stop saying, hey, this is hurting me, and we start saying, hey, this is what's expected of me. And that's how identity erosion begins. But there is a line that changes everything, and I wrote it down for us. You do not stop being a good teacher when you take care of yourself. You stop being a good teacher when you fail to take care of yourself. At Teacher Talk, we believe that the number one thing that you can do for your students, for your school, and for your principal is to give to them the most healthiest version of yourself possible. Anything less than that means that we are not being effective as a teacher. And as you can imagine, giving the healthiest version of ourselves is not going to happen through chronic exhaustion, a lack of rest, or pushing ourselves far beyond what our limits are. Once the unspoken rule takes hold of us, it doesn't just shape our behavior, it actually begins to rewrite and rewire our belief system. And it does this through 3 lies. Lie number 1 is, if I focus on myself, I'm taken away from others. Teachers begin to believe that caring for themselves somehow harms the students or somehow harms the school. But that belief assumes a couple of things. Number 1, it assumes that the amount of care that you need is limited, as if there's possible that you take care of yourself too much. It also assumes that energy somehow automatically restores itself, even though you're completely depleted. But the reality is that most teachers aren't over caring for themselves, they're under caring for themselves consistently. The best gift that you can give to others is a regulated, healthy version of yourself. Lie number 2 is that good teachers push through no matter what. And this is nothing more than the hustle and performance-based culture disguised as dedication. We live in a system that praises endurance, long hours, and self-sacrifice. And so the warning signs oftentimes get missed, like poor sleep, irritability, emotional numbness, snapping at your family, or feeling like you're consistently on edge. Teachers keep pushing because somehow we believe that stopping or slowing down means that we're a failure, as if we're the problem, as if the system isn't the problem. And what inevitably happens when we fail to slow down or fail to take care of ourselves is burnout. And we do feel like we're the problem, as if there's something wrong with us. And it's absolutely not true. Burnout is not a character flaw. Burnout is the predictable outcome of chronic overexhaustion and chronic stress. Lie number 3, needing boundaries means that I don't care enough. Availability has somehow become the metric of goodness. It sounds kind of like this. Are you available during your planning? Are you available during lunch? Can you be available after school? Are you available while you're at home? Can you do the grading and all the stuff that you couldn't do in your contract hours? Can you do that at home? Are you available for that? And when teachers draw limits, those limits are often interpreted as weakness or a lack of commitment or a failure to be a team player. And that's how work slowly invades every single space of our life. And before long, it begins to take over our very identity. A story I tell all the time is almost 4 years ago, my face went completely paralyzed and I thought I had a stroke, and I went to the doctor and he says you didn't have a stroke. And so I was glad for that. But what he did say is that if you don't do something about your stress is going to do something about you. And what he meant was I was going to have a catastrophic health event if I didn't learn to slow down, if I didn't learn how to manage the things that were coming into my life, the external things that were affecting me so much. If I didn't do something about those, I was going to have, he believed, a stroke or a heart attack. And the same thing's going to happen to you if you don't slow down. So what is it that we can do? So as you already know, at Teacher Talk, we're a faith-forward organization. It's not because we want to be offensive. It's just because that's who we are. And at Teacher Talk, our core verse is Proverbs chapter 4, verse number 23, that says, above all else, guard your heart, for from it flow the issues of life. And what I want you to know is that guarding your heart, that doesn't mean that you have to withdraw. It doesn't mean that you have to quit, or that you care less, or that you don't work hard, or that you don't take care of students. It doesn't mean any of that. But what it does mean is that you set boundaries in your life so that you can protect yourself from the negative external influences that affect your mind, your emotion, and your spirit. Because your heart shapes your thoughts, your beliefs, your attitudes, and eventually your actions. A properly guarded heart produces clarity, and clarity changes the way we experience things at school, because clarity ultimately allows you to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important. Recognize what is your responsibility versus what is not your responsibility. It will empower you to stop interpreting every single struggle as a personal failure. It will enable you to step out of the constant survival mode When we gain clarity as teachers, we're then able to make some internal shifts that will help us respond better to the pressures that we're dealing with at work. The very first shift that we have to make is awareness, because healing begins when we can speak truth to ourselves. We have to be able to recognize that this is hard. Teaching is hard. It's always been hard. We have to be able to say it's costing me more than I'm willing to pay right now. We have to be able to say that this pace of teaching is unsustainable. If you can't speak those things, if you can't be honest about those, then you cannot heal. The second shift that we got to make is in identity. Your worth, our worth, is not tied to our output. Exhaustion does not increase our value. Unpaid overtime doesn't make us more committed. Working at home does not make us a superhero teacher. All of those things combined, all that they do is make us a burned out teacher. A healthy identity says this: I'm valuable before I perform, I'm valuable after I perform, and I'm valuable no matter how I perform. And that belief alone will change how long we can stay in the teaching profession. Shift number 3 is permission, and it means permission to rest without guilt, because rest is not a reward. Rest is not something that you have to earn. Rest is not something that you get whenever you've done so much. Rest is maintenance. And without internal permission, it doesn't matter what boundaries you set, they'll never be able to stand up to the pressures that we deal with at work. So one of the resources that I created for you is the 5-minute reset. You can get it at the description box, or you can get it right there at the QR code. Now, I know that 5 minutes doesn't change everything. It just changes things little by little, all right? And so it's free, it's 100% free, and it's always free, so jump down there and grab it. Also, link down in the description box is Dr. Sandra Dalton Brown's book, Sacred Rest. She discusses 7 types of rest, and I gotta tell you, sleep is one of the least types of rest. There are other types that we need in order to avoid burnout and to be able to keep our sanity. So jump down there in the description box and grab that. The 5th shift is long-term effectiveness. Most systems measure effectiveness by short-term output. How much you did today, how available were you today, or how much you absorbed today without having to complain about it. But the interesting thing about teaching is that it's not a sprint, and effectiveness cannot be proven in a single week, a single year, or a single evaluation cycle. Long-term effectiveness asks this question: can you keep showing up every single day without losing your identity for a long period of time? And the reason why that is important is because a teacher who burns bright and burns out is not more effective than a teacher who works steady, sustainably, and with clarity year after year. And here's a truth that most teachers never hear: exhaustion is not evidence of your faithfulness. Exhaustion is not a badge of honor to be worn. Availability is not the same as making an impact. Guarding your heart doesn't make you less effective. It makes you more effective over a longer period of time. So just remember, you don't stop being a good teacher when you take care of yourself. You stop being a good teacher when you fail to take care of yourself. And if you like this video, there are 2 more unspoken rules right there for you to watch. But most of all, we want you to stay strong and keep teaching.